up, folks? Welcome back to All in Texas Football, and welcome back to the Winning Drive. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, young prodigy, C.J. Bogle, and, of course, our own coach, former high school football coach at Vernon, Capel, Brownwood, Rotan, Belton, also played college football at Abilene Christian, coached there as well, and was on the staff at the University of Texas for multiple head coaches. It is our own coach, and you can catch his work at ShipleyRanches.com these days. It's our own coach, Coach Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
Man, my wife surprised me with a little trip to Fort Worth at the Bowie House, and so I had to get her back from shopping and save me a little money back to the hotel so I could do the show.
You did say that your wifey likes the finer things in life. I remember you saying that at one time.
Yeah. Ain't no doubt.
Hey,
ain't no doubt. So
that's good for you, Coach. You get to enjoy it because you, as a coach, coaches don't enjoy the finer things in life. I would say most coaches, they blue collar, bare bones it when they can. Now you get to enjoy.
You sleep in your office at night sometimes. I mean,
like eat whatever they bring out. Yeah.
Just be thankful you got it.
Yeah. So now you get to enjoy the finer thing. I'm glad you're doing that, Coach. That's good stuff. CJ, how was your weekend, brother? How was everything for you?
Good. I made the trip up to Chicago for the weekend just to go see a couple buddies. It was cold. I wouldn't recommend those trips up to Chicago for February. I'd wait until it's a little sunnier. But no, it was a good time.
No, man, I don't miss that Midwest cold. I lived in Detroit for a while. I don't miss that. It's a different kind of cold, close to the lakes. Not fun at all. Yeah, man, that Hulk. We can call that Hulk. That's that Hulk, man. It penetrates. You got to have like 3 layers on. It penetrates the first 2 layers. It just cuts right through them things. All right, there you go. So a little catch up. Also, congrats to all the teams that had such a great weekend. I mean, I don't know if we can give them all props. Basically, I saw that John Bianco said the Longhorns went 11-1 this past weekend, including 7 top 25 wins. Baseball's Shriner Children's College Showdown tourney title to start off their season. You also had a big win for women's basketball, taking down Kim Mulkey with a big comeback. I think they were down by as much as 12 in that matchup. And the Texas men's tennis team in the ITA National Team Indoor Championship semis. Texas men's swimming and diving competing for SEC crown. So great all-around weekend for Texas sports. And, of course, yes, we're outside of football season. We want to give some props to all these sports that are doing so well right now on the 40 acres. All right, gentlemen, a lot of stuff to talk about on the show. CJ has a little bit of an update on the coaching vacancy on the 40 acres, so we'll get to that coming up. We'll also get to Pro Football Focus actually ranked the top returning wide receivers coming back. Well, should there be a Longhorn on that list? The Longhorns will definitely be facing a couple of wide receivers on that list. Ross Dellinger put out a report. He's claiming that by 2026, guys, that the 2 big conferences, 2 major conferences in college football now, the SEC and the Big Ten, will have majority control over the college football playoff. Maybe some people believe they do already, but he claims that that is actually going to be something that is acknowledged and on paper, not just something that we talk about amongst ourselves. So we'll get to that report from Ross Dellinger coming up a little bit later on. Also, I want to talk about the Tory Becton report that has been confirmed that he was getting a lot of interest from the NFL, getting some interest from the league, and that has led to him getting an extension and getting a little bit of a raise with the Longhorns. So we'll discuss that too. Also, whatever you want to talk about, questions, comments, we'll address as many of them as we can. Super Chat jump to the front line. You can interrupt the show at any time. So whatever you guys want to talk about, that's what we'll jump into. Also, I believe, because I think I just got the text actually. Boom! We're going to be joined by a lifetime Longhorn. Stevie Lee is going to join us as well, my former teammate. He's going to join us coming up. So we'll get to him in just a second. One thing I want to bring up while we get ready for Stevie Lee here. I know the big topic of conversation on the 40 acres as it relates to Texas football, CJ, is the vacancy, the coaching vacancy for the running back position. You actually had a report about a name, maybe a couple of names actually, to keep an eye out for if you're a Longhorn fan following this vacancy and following the coaching search.
Yeah, new name today. I heard it over the weekend, and then I heard it again this morning, and that's normally when you start to see the little bell alarms go off and these type of searches. But was it Norvell McKenzie, the running backs coach from Georgia Tech, is a name to know for the running backs coach vacancy in Austin. Of course, down in Georgia, has recruited Atlanta several times. has produced Jamal Haynes this past year, who was an all-conference guy for Georgia Tech in the ACC. Heck of a running back if you haven't watched him. But, of course, it would seamlessly transition that vacancy and hole left by Tashard Choice and fill it with another guy familiar with South Florida, Broward County, recruiting Atlanta, which is as hot a spot in all the country. And when it comes to these big-time prospects in the SEC, another one to watch, E.J. Barthel out of Nebraska. We've reported on him over the weekend, and I've continued to hear Baylor running back coach Keenan Hall, despite some report about him maybe not being up for the job at the moment, is still a candidate that I've been keeping a close eye on. Those are really the three that I'm starting to look at. Of course, there are others. We could sit here and debate probably for the next 30 minutes, Rod and Coach, if there's a more attractive opening in all of college football. And that could just be coordinator positions. That could be, I don't know how many open head coaching jobs are still available. I would assume none. But right now, this is as hot a job that you'll find in the market. There are coaches everywhere vying interest right now for this position. And why not, right? It's a stacked room. You got a great offensive coordinator. You have basically sign up and you're going to get a 1,000-yard rusher with Steve Sarkisian in his history. This is a big job and a lot of folks are interested. But right now, those are the three names: Georgia Tech, Norvell McKenzie, Nebraska, E.J. Barthel, and I'm continuing to keep an eye on Baylor's running backs coach, Keenan Hall as well.
David Parcells here says, Sark likes those Georgia ties when it comes to coaches. I just think he understands that in order for you to really conquer the SEC, if you will, right now Georgia's going to be it's got to be a big part of it. You got to be, it's Georgia and Florida. You got to find ways to infiltrate those states. And I've been pointed out for a while, the Atlanta metro area, no metro area in the country is producing NFL players at a more prolific rate right now than the Atlanta metro area. That's been for the last 5 years, guys. That's since 2020. So it's something that's going on for a while. Georgia has overtaken California in terms of the big three states for football. It is now Texas, Florida, and Georgia. It is no longer Texas, Florida, and California. If you're stating that, then that's antiquated. California is now fourth in terms of producing it. Now Georgia's overtaking it because of what Atlanta's doing. So maybe that's what Sark's a little bit kind of obsessed with right now, guys. Is Coach, do you ever see, Coach, when you were, obviously with the Longhorns, was it just was there any place outside of Texas that became a focal point?
Well,
was it all
yeah, we really tried to make some inroads in California, and then of course, Tim Beck going out to Tucson, of course, and getting Bijan. That was huge. But Rod, I think when you were on the team, it was kind of a bragging point among Texas with the Texas high school coaches. They had a roster with 0 guys from out of state. There was 1 year there was not one out of state guy on the roster, not one.
That's crazy.
And how things have changed.
Yeah, you're right. That used to be a pitch. That was part of the sales pitch, right, Coach? Like, oh no, we all Texas. It's all Texas competing for Texas with Texas guys. And you're right. Now, those back in the day, we used to have a Texas versus California All-Star game. I don't know if guys remember that. Yeah. Remember that, Coach? I played in that thing. I played, and I had so much state pride. We lost, by the way, to California. Hail Mary, not my fault, not on my side. Kyle Bowler threw a Hail Mary on the other side. I think it was I want to say it was was it Kareem Jackson? Does that name sound familiar? Anyway, but I remember playing that game. To your point, Coach, that was part of the sales pitch. We had a lot of Texas guys that I played with on that All-Star team, and part of the sales pitch when getting us to play in was, no, you want to play representing the state of Texas against California. And you're right now. That's an old, antiquated, notion, I guess, these days.
That's why the Florida Five was such a big deal back in the day. Remember that?
Yes.
The Charles Strong area. You're like, okay, now Texas is going to Florida to get some guys. I don't think only 2 or maybe 3 actually made it to campus, but big deal at the time. Got me excited in high school.
Great memory there about the Florida Five, CJ. Random reference. Good reference there. I think that's a great place to pivot back to Stevie Lee. Let's get to my former teammate and a lifetime Longhorn and a good friend of the show, Stevie Lee, brought to you by our good friends over at Hardgrove Roofing. Thank you to Hardgrove Roofing. Check them out, hardgroveroofing.com. And actually, right now, if you reach out to our friends over at Hardgrove Roofing, you can get a free roof inspection today. Offices all over Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. 512-645-3202. Know who's on your roof with our friends at Hardgrove Roofing. That's hardgroveroofing.com. You won't meet a more pro burnt orange roofing company. All right, folks, they are the most pro burnt orange roofing company out there. They bring us, obviously, my man Stevie Lee, but also have partnerships with other lifetime Longhorns as well. So we really appreciate them helping us out. Stevie, how was your weekend?
Great weekend, man. How are y'all?
Doing great,
CJ, looks like Stevie's just come back from Chicago.
Yeah, he's got the beanie.
Hey, man. In my old age, man, my wife makes fun of me that I walk around the house with a beanie on because, man, my head just get cold. And I get older, I just get cold walking around the house.
I could have used that this weekend, I'll tell you that. It was
Your
chilly.
head gets cold. Why don't you wear a robe around the house, man, like a robe? You know what I'm saying?
You know what? I got a smoking robe, but, mama like to see me in it. I won't get no work done.
Yeah. Well, you call it work, we call it something else.
No question, Coach.
It was great. That was good. That was a nice one there, Steve. I wonder if wifey's around want to hear that one.
She ain't.
All right, Steve, I got to ask you, man. Last week we had you on. We were talking about a coaching vacancy. Now I got to ask you about another coaching vacancy. It ain't the same one. We were talking about Blake Gidding departing, heading to Georgia Tech to become the defensive coordinator there. They have since hired a Mark Orfe, a defensive back coach. But now we have another vacancy I got to ask you about, Tashard Choice. And a lot of people are saying this may be the toughest of coaches that he has had to replace so far, Stevie, because Tashard Choice checked so many boxes. Say that 5 times fast. But he checked so many boxes for the Longhorns. Talk about, I know you've been around the program. You're really close to it. What are your thoughts about Tashard Choice moving on?
No, you know what, man? I'm always happy for anybody that's stepping up in their career that wants to move on and do things like that. I'm happy for the individual. But I'm also, how do I put this, guys? And y'all can have different opinion. I'm okay with it because we got such good running backs right now. When Mack Brown hired Coach Chambers out of Dallas Carter, he came in with Ricky Williams. I mean, how much coaching are you really doing with Ricky Williams? It's like, good run, Ricky. You know what I'm saying? He came in with Ricky Williams, and was Priest Holmes still here too? So I think we got a pretty good stable of running backs that you won't really feel a coaching lull, because those guys are actually really good in that room, and we were stacked, still stacked in that room. So yes, we need to get a good coach. I think the mindset should be recruiting other than coaching those guys on the field, because Sark is going to do what he do. Whatever those kids can do, Sark is going to figure them out in the offense, right? This coach right here, this coaching vacancy needs to be heavily recruitable, if that's a word, So that's my thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys think about that, but I just think that like for DBs, for instance, like, yes, there's a lot of things that need to be taught to a DB and about the defense and the reactions of the offense. But running back, man, see ball, see hole, hit hole. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with whomever he put back there. I just need a good recruiter getting some guys in.
I think that's actually a fair point, and we could have that discussion of which of your position coaches can you designate to being solely a recruiter, or more so than not, versus which position coaches need to be of the developmental sort, right? I think defensive line, offensive line, your trenches, you have to have kind of that forefront of development. That's where your nucleus of the team is built. But to your point, running backs, and especially with the guys that Texas has been linked to in the past, for the most part, you don't need a whole lot of development. These guys are freaks coming out, right? They're ahead athletically than most guys. Bijan Robinson, I don't mean to take away from Stan Drayton or Tashard Choice. Hey, just stay healthy and you're going to be a 1,000-yard rusher and a top 10 pick, right? So I like that idea with, I guess, in the locker room or when you're recruited, did y'all realize that the guy recruiting you had a certain charisma to him and had a background in recruiting at all? Or was it just, hey, it just pieced together the university, maybe a fair roster depth chart, and then I like this guy as well. That's why I ended up at the school I ended up, or was it, hey, the recruiting prowess of this guy kind of preceded itself when he came to my house and sat down with Mom?
Yeah. So for me, man, it was Mike Tollison. It was my defensive tackles coach. Yeah, Coach Tolley. But I had a relationship with Coach Tolley at LSU when him and Bull Reese was at LSU. LSU was my first offer as leaving out of my sophomore year. So he was recruiting me in high school, and then he gets the job at Texas, and we still have that relationship. And then I also had a relationship with Cole Pitman and the Pitman family that we were coming down here all the time to see Cole, and so Coach Tolley just picked up from where he left off. Now, Coach Tolley was also a good coach, and you remember he coached Booger McFarland at LSU, and Booger McFarland, or Anthony McFarland, was a phenomenal defensive tackle at LSU. And I was like, if he can do that over there, I want to play for that guy, partly, of my decision to come to Texas. So that was my journey and my decision. But a lot of times, man, but who started coach or recruiting me from Shreveport was Daryl Drake. He had that area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Coach Drake. Now, you get Coach Drake loose. Hey. He you can have some fun with Coach Drake, man. He was a great guy. He was down to earth, and he knew how to talk to me. He knew how to talk to my mom and dad, and I love that about him. And then he passed that when they really wanted me, he passed me on to Coach Tolley. And Coach Tolley was a good recruiter, but I knew he was a better coach than a recruiter. So I wanted to play for him for sure.
Yeah, it's a great point because Coach Brew recruited me, Coach Tim Brewster, and then it was like you said, they kind of transitioned to talking to Coach Withers and then Coach Carl Brewer Reese, as you talked about. So yeah, it was Coach, and Coach Brew was a recruiting superstar, but I didn't know who Coach Brew was back then. See, I had no idea. All I knew was Coach Brew was the guy that walked in to Lamar High School and was basically, as soon as I saw him, I was like, that dude's kind of the Ric Flair of recruiting, man. He was in there like dabbing up all the coaches and dabbing up all the players. Like, who is this dude? How does he act like he know everybody? But then I found out Coach Brew act like he know everybody no matter where he go. So he's going to do that.
So we talked about recruiting on my podcast last night with Coach Brown. So go to Stories Inside the Man Cave. Yeah, Stories Inside the Man Cave, the pass rush with Stevie Lee. I had Coach Brown on. I was nervous as hell. That's my old ball coach, man. I felt like Ryan Clark interviewing my old ball coach. And so he was we talked about recruiting then and just being honest to kids. And you ask Coach Brown one question, he just goes off. So it's probably an hour interview with me and Sean Clinch talking with Coach Brown last night. It's out there right now. So y'all go and take a look at it, man. Drop a like us, follow us, and then share it with us, man. It was fun to interview Coach Brown, man.
That's pretty sweet.
I will check that out as soon as the show's over. I didn't realize that's a great get. And what did Coach, because you know Coach Brown really well. I mean, you not only was recruited by you, but you remained close with Coach Brown since he left. And I'm glad he's back because I've heard he's moving back, which is great. If he's probably already moved back. What surprised you? Did he tell you anything that surprised you?
In the last couple of months, we're putting this movie together for Cole Pitman or the Pitmans. And so we talk about that in the show last night. And what's really surprised me in the last couple of months is how much he was affected by Cole's death. And I don't know if you guys remember, we had a teammate that passed away when we were at the University of Texas. That teammate, he and I went to high school together Shreveport Evangel. And so I've had a long relationship with him ever since I was a freshman in high school. And then he comes to college at the University of Texas a year before I get here. So that's that backstory. And so, but he talks about how much that affected him and how much that helped him cope with the kid that passed away at North Carolina this year. Wow. Because it was different situations, but it was a way of helping him cope with and try to get the team to deal with what was the kid's name? I forgot his name. I'm sorry. But the kid that passed away that played for Coach Mack Brown at North Carolina. So he talked about all that, and that really surprised me how much that affected him on how he relates to players and how he keeps players, try to keep players close to him. And so I thought that was pretty neat. The other thing he talked about was recruiting. And I didn't know that he played at Vanderbilt. I just only thought he played at Florida State. So
I didn't know that either.
We joked about he was in the transfer portal before there was a transfer portal.
Oh, that's great. Oh, and I think the young man's name was Tylee Craft.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, but that's interesting about, and I mean, there are so many guys that still honor Cole Pitman. Not only you talking about you yourself doing so, the Cole Pitman golf tournament has been going on for years too, and I know his father is still pretty close with the program and some of the guys. So keeping that honor. Thank you, Stevie, for keeping his legacy alive. We appreciate that.
And I do that. Everything that I do with that is kind of sensitive. So if Chase Pitman, his brother, and Mark Pitman, if they're not on board, I'm not on board. So I just make sure whenever we do anything, I make sure those two guys are on board, and these guys are on board for this movie. We're raising money for it. The writers are already starting to write, and Coach Brown's involved. There's some big money donors that are involved. And I just got off the phone with Jim Saxton today. He's there's actually making rounds of funding available to us if we want to get involved too. So but we met with the producers about a month ago. They wanted stories from college, and it was really unique for me and Philip to be there, Philip Geiger to be there, because we have perspective from being in high school and in college with him. So this is happening. It's just they've raised a lot of money. There's probably a little bit more to go. So if you want to get involved, contact me on my social media, and we can help you get involved if you want to. But it's pretty neat. And I was going to say, it's not just me just keeping his legacy alive. It's really BJ Sloan and Roy with the golf tournament. They put that together, and it's been fantastic ever since we've been doing it. And it's become a reunion outside of the sanctioned reunion from the university. So so we're all cool and nice at the reunion we do at with the university, but this is not a university sanctioned reunion. So if y'all want to get out there and have some fun with some players,
come on now.
And by fun, I mean probably a shot on every hole. My wife is like, "You taking an Uber out there, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." So, so I can Uber home. We have a really good time, and the stories are flying. And Mr. Pitman, he's usually out there, and but it was a really good way of keeping Cole's legacy alive, and it's been going ever since, man. It's been 24 years, and we're still keeping Cole's legacy alive, man, with all of the brothers and the teammates.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. Jerry and I were able to stop by a little bit last year, and we rode around the golf carts, followed around BJ, Roy, and Sloan. And this was right after we heard about, we had BJ on, Rod, and we heard about the urban story. And, so Jerry and I talked to him briefly, and Jerry got a great interview with the three of them, actually. But we made sure ahead of time. It's like, hey, if I don't know what kind of stories you got for us this time, just know that if they
could go viral. They could go viral, BJ.
We can't slow them down if they go supernova again. But no, that was an awesome atmosphere. It was a cool event, a great cause, and again, to your point, Stevie, it was basically a reunion of former Longhorns past, present, future. Cameron Dicker was out there as well. It was a really cool deal.
Yeah. And one more thing before we let you go, Stevie, because to the point about Mack Brown and how, devastated, he was about the Cole Pitman loss and how he's giving him perspective and helped him deal with another tragedy on one of his North Carolina teams recently. When they always ask him the one thing he could change from his coaching days, he brings up the Cole Pitman thing and always brings up the Texas A&M bonfire. When they ask him if he could change, well, he never brings up like a game, a play. He always brings up those two things.
Yeah, he mentioned that last night as well in the interview. He said that those 12 families that lost their kids due to a tradition. It was just a tragedy. Kids was just out there having fun. And he said that he keeps touch points and thinking about those 12 families that lost their kids, man. He talked about it last night. Yeah. No,
I totally believe I'm telling you, when he starts reflecting, he is genuinely still emotionally traumatized and devastated by it. And, just because he's an authentic, genuine guy. Mack Brown, Hall of Fame coach, but a Hall of Fame human too. All right, thanks, Stevie. Well, you're a Hall of Fame human too, brother. We appreciate it. Sorry to keep you on for so long. Thanks for
good, man.
Monday, man. It's always a pleasure.
It's a pleasure being on with y'all. You never keep me on long enough, man. I can talk all day about this stuff, but I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all, hook 'em, and I guess I'll get back to work.
All right. Hey, thanks, brother.
Keep that robe on, bro.
Hey, he knows when to put it on. He knows when to put it on. That segment brought to you by our good friends at Hardcore Roofing. Know who's on your roof. Thanks to Hardcore Roofing for sponsoring the winning drive with offices all over Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Hardgrove is the choice of customers everywhere for superior, reliable service. If you're in need of a new roof, you'll want to know who's on your roof with our friends at Hardgrove Roofing, and reach out right now, 512-645-3202. They're offering a free roof inspection today at hardgroveroofing.com. All right, thank you to Stevie Lee, and we appreciate him for coming on each and every Monday. All right, let's hit a couple of questions, then we'll come back to some of the topics that we have. By the way, apparently it is the three guys you mentioned, CJ, as potential names to keep a lookout for the potential vacancy at Texas. KD 35, I'm the best, said, wow, CJ. Pete Nakos just reported same thing, the exact same three running backs, coaches that you mentioned as well. So it's out good there. Good stuff there, CJ. All right, let's get to the question here, I believe, from Said, who says, around this time last year, the internet was oohing and awing the growth of Colin Simmons during winter conditioning. Is there any news similar about this freshman class? I'll say this. I did see, before I give it up to you guys, I did see that Pro Football Focus, they recently put out their highest graded true freshman, and they have Colin Simmons among the highest graded true freshmen in the Power Four for this past season. Yeah, so he had an 82.6 grade. They had Dylan Stewart at 80.9. Edge rushers, probably make sure I'm keeping it here. So highest graded edge rusher as a true freshman in the country. I don't know, CJ, any news about any whispers, any noise about any of the other true freshmen coming in and maybe having that kind of impact?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one is probably Justice Terry, right? And we reported, or Jerry Hamilton reported about 2 weeks ago, that he was going to be a guy that starts at the jack position to begin his career. He's about 265, 275 pounds right now. If you can get him up to about 280, you can play him at that end spot. Will he end his career there? Probably not. I think he's a guy that's going to be pretty mobile around 300, 310 pounds, kind of in that Byron Murphy mold, if you will, which leads more to a 3 to 5 technique on the defensive line. So he's been someone that's already turned some heads. I know that Jonah Williams is with the baseball team at the moment. He actually did not travel up to Arlington. Of course, he's still working back. He actually threw on the field for the first time since breaking his clavicle in the fall on the football field. So a good positive note there. Of course, Texas not expecting him on the football field to begin spring practice. One other name I'll throw out there is Bo Barnes. Again, I kind of bumped into him going to the Texas Texas LSU basketball game a few weeks ago, or Texas South Carolina, excuse me. So it was about 2 weeks ago. Just bumped into him. 242 pounds, Rod, coach. This is a true freshman that ran 10.9, middle linebacker. That's a big kid that's moving very well. And again, we've talked about it ad nauseum now for quite some time. Big guys that move very well and just have freakish athletic traits. Bo Barnes certainly in that conversation. I don't want to leave him out moving forward. But yeah, 240 pounds. I bet he gets down to about 233, the low 230s. But certainly that size at that speed is going to play very well in the SEC.
Yeah, I would love to see, going back to your earlier point about Justice Terry, him on that NASCAR package, kind of how Colin Simmons was starred on that NASCAR package this past year. Coach, CG's kind of brought up, some of the guys, Colin Simmons and Justice Terry, how these guys are transforming their bodies, transforming their physiology, within months of getting on the 40 acres. We've talked about it, but probably not enough about Tory Becton's impact at Texas. There was a recent report that Tory Becton, the strength and conditioning coach for Texas, and it has been confirmed that he did get interest from the NFL, decided, that, or at least I think after being extended and shown some love here by Texas, probably a pay raise as well, that he decides to stay at Texas. Talk about the strength. We don't talk enough about strength and conditioning these days in college football. There's so much emphasis on transfer portal, talent acquisition, talent retention, and development, of course. But man, a lot of people consider the strength and conditioning coaches to be the soul of a football program.
Yeah,
you probably can speak to it better than anybody else about what kind of impact those guys usually have, especially in the offseason, being around the guys. But I think that a big part of these freshmen being able to contribute right away is how quickly they can transform their bodies when they get to the 40 acres. And Tory Becton's a big part of that. How much props should we be giving to Tory Becton for this reinvention of Texas football right now?
Well, probably more than he's gotten, certainly before this season. But we're talking about guys we've heard about. Redshirt freshmen. I don't know if you're right. I think did Parker Livingstone redshirt? I know he got to play, but did he play enough to?
I believe he kept his red shirt.
Yeah, I believe he might have.
That's a name I keep hearing a lot of. That is going to be have a great career. On campus. From what I've been hearing, he's been turning a lot of heads. But back to Tory Becton, the strength and conditioning staff. You couldn't have put it any better, Rod. That's the heart and soul of the program, because there's some days in whatever job you have, you go to work, I ain't feeling it today. You just kind of get through the day and it's, I'm just in survival mode. Man, that guy brings it every single day. I mean, the level of intensity, and he has to be consistent at that level every single day. Because there's probably guys in the weight room 7 days a week, depending on what time of the year it is. There's going to be guys in there. And but there's much more than just the strength part of it. There's injury prevention through the movement, and some of the things that he does is trying to strengthen up quads and things that holding the whether it's the labrum or the ACL or whatever. Really trying to help those guys in those areas with movement and strength to prevent injuries. But I think more than anything else, not more than anything else, the development is huge, physical development. But it's the mental part that he plays that I don't ever hear anybody talk about, but I've witnessed it myself. And there's a reason that everything seems to be hitting on all 8 cylinders, right now. And that's because it is a consistent message throughout the program that the kids hear. There's a lot of days they don't see a coach, but they see Becton and his staff every day, just about, And so what he's doing to bring this team together and make sure everybody's on the same page. I know this. What I've heard is that if you're not busting your butt every single day, you're going to it's obvious. You stand out like a sore thumb, because you are in the minority, and you will get called out. And Tory's not having to call them out. The players are calling them out, and I hear it doesn't happen often, but it's just the level of expectation that he's set, and he's not full of himself. There's some guys that get in that position and they start seeing the success their players are having, and they start, wanting to get on social media and talk about everything they've done and this and that, developing players. You ain't going to hear that from Tory Becton. You are not going to hear that from him, because he is all in with this program. I'm grateful to hear that he's got an extension and got a raise, because he deserves it. Because that would, to me, besides Coach Choice, and even including Coach Choice, probably that would be the toughest position to try to fill at this point, because he has established a level of expectation, and the proof's in the pudding. What he does works. You bring somebody else in, and they may have a whole different philosophy, about, oh, we're not going to get too big. We're going to work on endurance, or we're going to work on that, whatever. Everybody's got a philosophy, What he's doing is working. The proof's in the pudding, and I really think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle that we need to keep on this staff right now is Tory Becton.
Good call.
That's a great point, because I'm glad you brought the mental part. I had a brief conversation with Coach Becton, just been at one of the open practices there, and I was surprised actually with how much he brought up the mental edge and mental toughness. Mad Dog was big on mental toughness. That's why we wore weight vests in the sand pit and ran 1,000-yard shuttles. He wanted you to be able to mentally overcome adversity and pain and, your conditioning issues. And so in the fourth quarter, that wouldn't affect you mentally. I was surprised with how much he emphasized the mental aspect of that trade, the toughness aspect of it. We know they have the sports science. It's Texas, guys. They got all the guys with these really advanced body monitors and these devices that can actually monitor how much effort you're putting in, if you're maxed out, if you're not maxed out, if you're dehydrated, heart rate, all this kind of stuff. So like the coach said, they know if you ain't giving it all. They literally have the science. It's telling them on the phone, this guy only putting in 75%, just so you know. They really do know that now. And they got, I think his name is Sam Cantorno. I apologize if I mispronounced her name. And we interviewed her for Third Longhorn. And she talked about, we're out there every day. And I give the guys their numbers afterwards. And I tell them, say, listen, just so you know, we got you slacking up here, here, and here. And it's whoa, talk about mind-blowing. So they have all that. And he does a great job with that. Look at what they did in the NFL Combine a couple of years ago with Xavier Worthy setting the 40-yard dash record and all that kind of stuff, and all the Tavondre Sweat and AD Mitchell. So that you're getting you're maximizing that physical talent, athletic profile. But this is a team that couldn't close at one point under Sark. They couldn't close. Remember, we used to talk about this. This team can't finish. They can't close. He talked about how that was a talking point among them and the team, and he had to change the strength and conditioning program in order to help this team close, so that they can finish and peak at the right time, and they can finish stronger. It's so I'm with Coach. I think he is really now he's maybe not undervalued, because they probably paying him what he's worth. But I think from a fan perspective, we undervalue his impact. He has been phenomenal.
So what Rod's talking about, for those of you that don't know, there's a system that they use at the University of Texas, and a lot of teams use it. It's called a Catapult system, and it's a vest type thing. It looks like a sports bra for men, really. But anyway, it's got a GPS sensor on it, and it like you said, it monitors heart rate, it monitors breathing, it monitors miles per hour, the change of direction, everything. It monitors everything, and it spits out more information than you could probably ever use, really. But you're right. They know. Hey, dude, you are working at this percentage every day. What's wrong with you, man? Here it is. I printed it out. Here's the chart. It shows. You were dogging it today. You're not feeling good. What's up? Mama sick. Your girl mad at you. Well, what's going on? And it's a great tool that they, and trust me, Texas has the cutting edge technology. They've got what we call the lab. I don't know what they call it now, but it's a monitoring system where they can go in and put the kids through series of movements, and then it shows them where their deficiencies are, like, squatting and maybe doing a standing broad jump or whatever. It shows deficiencies in hamstrings, quads, lower back, whatever, through these movements. They put jumping plyometrics onto a deal, jumping off a plyometric, and this computer analyzes every aspect of their movement and will tell them what they need to improve on with their flexibility, with their strength, whatever it is. And it's really amazing.
It also helps drive competitiveness too, because where do those numbers go? Especially the speed, the broad jump, kind of those quantifiable numbers. Well, they go right on a board inside the locker room or inside the training facility, where it says, the 5 leaders of today. And what folks really want to be the top of? speed. So that was a big conversation that we had last year was, who's the fastest on the team? Because we heard Jaden Blue, we heard Isaiah Bond, all sorts of numbers. And we actually got to see it, right? We had those numbers. I think they actually got leaked out. And, those conversations, you could certainly sit there and say, all right, if you want to beat me, you got to go harder than I am this week. But also, it just kind of adds to the to Coach's point, they know when you're slacking. When you're doing your planks at the end of practice, they know whose knees hitting the ground when coaches' backs are turned. And that gets back to, the team, the coaches, whatnot. So it's good. Texas Chick 01 here says it's peer pressure. Yeah, but it's good peer pressure, right?
Positive peer pressure.
It's the positive peer pressure. It's that positive culture that pushes the envelope forward. And that's exactly where you want to be. But I love that little tidbit there, Coach. That's good stuff.
One more thing, then I'll shut up. I took for a time there when I was at the university. I took care of the pro scouts when they came in, got them set up with film, got them set up with everything they need to see. You know who they want to talk to first every time?
Who?
Everyone, the strength coach. Every time. That's who they want to talk to because they want to know about work ethic. And if that stuff's posted, which it used to be posted on the bulletin board in the hall, and those scouts guess what they're doing? They're stopping and looking at those stats and see the percentages.
They're right here, Coach.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. I mean, so that's Tory Becton and his crew, man. They're worth every penny we're paying them.
I agree with CB here. You don't have to shut up, Coach. Keep on talking because we keep on learning new stuff. That was great. That was awesome. All right. I want to get Coach's thoughts about this story from Ross Dellinger. But first, let's thank our friends over at South Point Dodge before we move on. Friends over at South Point Dodge, they've been with us for a long time and really proud of this partnership with southpointdodge.com. So Texas football fans, remember, you can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. They have over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including an amazing selection of Ram 1500s, 2500s, and even 3500s. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. And speaking of scoring big right now, you can score big. They have over 50 Ram 2500s right now, all marked down with huge savings over at South Point Dodge. Now you can go see their fantastic inventory in person off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online and go to southpointdodge.com. Make it easy on yourself. But that, my friends at South Point Dodge, they'll make it easy on you too, offering the best deals, all right, on trade-ins, getting great value there as well, or on brand new cars. No matter what you need, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. Austin's automotive everything is southpointdodge.com. Thank you very much to our friends at South Point Dodge. We appreciate them. All right, I got to get you guys' thoughts. And this may be a story that maybe it was obvious, right? And maybe, Ross Dellinger, who does great work, didn't even have to report this, but I just think it confirms something that we already, as college football fans, feel. We already think we know. He claims in his latest report last spring during intense and at times heated negotiations over the future of the college football playoff, leaders of the Big Ten and the SEC threatened to create their own postseason system if they were not granted a majority of college football playoff revenue and full authority over the playoff format. In the end, executives of the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame signed a memorandum of understanding handing control over to college football's two richest conferences. And soon he claims here they are ready or expected to exercise that control. He says within the SEC and Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the playoff to 14 or 16 teams, assign multiple automatic qualifiers per league, as many as 4 each for themselves, and finalizing a scheduling arrangement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners. This is what sources told Yahoo Sports. And also, added nugget, I guess we're going to talk about a lot of different things here. The playoff format change would clear the way for the SEC administrators to finally make the long-discussed move to play a nine regular season conference game schedule and would trigger perhaps all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend. All right, lot to discuss there. You got them talking about expanding the playoff, SEC and Big Ten with control over the playoff and the scheduling, and potentially a 9-game conference schedule for the SEC. All right, Coach, your thoughts first off. Big Ten, SEC controlling the college football playoff format and with what they want, 4 automatic qualifiers, I believe, for each league. Do you think that's just them being monopolizing, basically the college football playoffs with the Big Ten, the SEC brand, or is this just the SEC and the Big Ten taking what is basically theirs? They believe that they have the best teams in college football and the most competitive product in college football, and they want to display that in the college football playoff.
Well, it's called strong arming, and it's kind of like what's the guy's name that with Elon Musk, they call him big balls.
Oh yeah, the Doge, on the Doge committee. Yeah,
yeah. So these are guys saying, hey man, we got the bounty here. You can't do anything without us. And so if you want us to keep playing with y'all, this is how it's going to be, or we're going to take our ball and we're going to go home. We're going to create our own league, our own whatever. I mean, we're not controlled by the NCAA because we have all the marbles. And obviously people in the Big Ten, the SEC are going to love this. Everybody else, we're going to be villains. If you associate with the SEC or Big Ten, you're going to be a villain because, but there's going to be, what is it? They're saying like potentially Notre Dame, if they're in the top 14, they're in, and a couple or 3 at large. I mean, I think everybody can be taken care of. And you know what? I mean, they talked about it on Coffee and Football this morning. It's money. It's money. I mean, it's all about money. They expanded Bobby was telling that they expanded basketball. It's all about money. It's more money for those conferences and for those schools, as well as, entertainment and more people to see the brand out there, which is invaluable, really. So, I do think, they're obviously the 2 best conferences in the nation. Not that somebody else can't sneak up once in a while and make a run and maybe beat them or whatever, but they're, they do have all the marbles, and they do need to have their fair share of the pie, because they are what the SEC especially, but the Big Ten as well. They're what makes college football so enjoyable for everybody to watch. When you see, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Auburn, when you see these type of teams playing at the level they're playing at, drawing the ratings that they draw, you got the marbles.
Yeah, I totally agree. The one takeaway I like from all of this, Rod and Coach, is 9 conference games across the board. That should be the case in the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC. 9 games. Let's make it uniform. That's just the baseline. And then you could pick and choose who you want your marquee game to be, what you want your non-conference to look like. But every single team in the Power 4 needs to be playing 9 conference games every single year. There's no reason for some schedules to have Ohio State, some schedules to have the Citadel all on the same weekend, and then you fill it in with 2 or 3 other directional schools. There's just no reason for that level of discrepancy between individual roster or schedule.
Great point.
I'm over it. So move me to 9 games, and we can figure out what needs to happen from there. But look, I'm all for expansion here. I thought this year, the playoffs, it kind of got a bad rap in year 1 because there were some blowouts. You expanded even more. There are probably going to be even more blowouts, but we'll see how they end up kind of teetering if they go to a bye system or not. Because I do think you could fit in, if you go to 14 and, you give the first 2 teams byes, then look, hey, you give the champion of the Big Ten, you give the champion of the SEC a bye. All right, now you got 6 games, right? You move on after round 1, you're to round 2, there's 8 teams remaining, and it's just the best of 8, right? That's how that works going forward. I kind of like that. Like, very similar to how we saw this year with the 12-team playoff, you just added another game, right? And instead of 4 teams getting by, you get 2. And that's deserved. You crown the conference champion, you reward them for winning the conference. They're into the round 2 of the playoff. That's how I would envision it. I understand why a 16-team playoff would make sense, obviously. Then it's just a true, basically, what's it called? The March Madness tournament. It's just 16 teams. It's just one half of or a quarter of the bracket, and you find out a winner from there until we go into, let's expand to 18 or 17. And then you got to plan to get into the tournament, and that's way down the line, right? But I understand it. And if you're a Big 12 or an ACC commissioner, you should be vying for this, right? Of course, the Big 10 and SEC are going to be pushing to get 4 solidified teams in every year or whatnot. But hey, you're telling me that a Utah or Colorado couldn't have at least made one of these games competitive this year, or Clemson, as you know, as much as they had to win that conference to get into it, they weren't a competitive team this year. You know, there are competitive games that are out there to be had as a result of, expansion. You just obviously got to be smart with who they play and how you match up with them round one if you're the committee.
Arizona State, some people said, was one of the worst teams in the playoff. They gave Texas the toughest game.
Yeah, 100%.
In the playoffs, because a lot of times it's about matchups. But I told you I went and looked up most valuable athletic department guys. Out of the top 15 most valuable athletic departments in college sports, 14 are in the SEC and the Big Ten. Notre Dame is the exception there. Top 20, it's 18. Notre Dame and Clemson are the exceptions there. Out of the top 30, 25 of them most valuable athletic departments in the country are in the SEC and the Big Ten. 25 out of 30. And then 29 out of 40. So to Coach's point, that's where all the money is. That's where all the money, and if that's where all the money is, when revenue sharing happens, that's where even more of the money will go. That's where more of the athletes are going to go. So it's just harder. This is going to be harder and harder for some of these schools outside of those 2 power conferences and outside of the structure of the power conferences, period, to be able to compete with the separation of the have and the have-nots. I saw a number that just floored me the other day. I'll give it to you guys really quickly before we kind of end the discussion on this report. And it was about transfers. And it was from Chris Hummer. Shout out to Chris Hummer who threw this out there. That if you look at the first and second team conference players from Group of 5, the Group of 5 conferences, so he said there were 127 first or second team selections for those conferences. He said more than half of them transferred this offseason. Almost 58% of them. The guys who made the guys who were all the best in their conference, all conference selections, they decided to transfer. And he said 67 of the 73 ended up at Power 4 schools. So transferring your all conference players in the Group of 5, transferring from that obviously to power conferences, just getting to the point where it's just going to be way too hard for those schools to even.
They're like the minor leagues now.
Pretty much. Yes. And it's just going to get worse. And that's why the Big Ten and the SEC are just like, you know what? Now is the time. Let's assert our control, strong arm, as Coach said. And let's, get what we believe is our proper representation in these college football playoffs, which will probably be 4 automatic bids. I think you're at 7 of the 12 this year from the SEC and the Big Ten. So you're close there you're close to there being, essentially majority controlled by the SEC and the Big Ten anyway. And they want to expand it so that they won't look like it's all SEC and Big Ten teams. And that way they'll let more Big 12 ACC teams in. And then maybe you'll get more than one Group of 5 representative, maybe more than one if they expand it.
If they're worthy of it, yes, that's great. That's why I like the way they're structuring it.
Yeah.
If you're worthy, you'll have a shot,
Yep. But it's going to be tough more and more going forward to have a team that's worthy of that. All right. Before we move on, we got a couple of more questions that we want to hit. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery before we get close to the end of the winning drive here. Our friends at Flat Creek Estate Winery, folks, one of the best venues, of course, in Central Texas, but just minutes from downtown Austin. And they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. You've heard me talk about it. In fact, we got some Super Texan in there on the counter right now. Probably going to enjoy some Super Texan tonight with spaghetti that my wife made. It's fantastic. Second day spaghetti. But anyway, Flat Creek Estate Winery, not only will you find Super Texan at your local Specs, but they have a great display at your local Central Market. So the good word is getting out about the fantastic wine from Flat Creek Estate Winery. Not only do they produce some of the best premium wines on the market, but also they're a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. Recently, we had a member of the On Texas football family get engaged, as a matter of fact, at Flat Creek Estate Winery. So it's perfect for any and every occasion. Check them out for yourself, flatcreekestate.com. We really appreciate them for being a sponsor of the winning drive. All right, getting back to a couple of the topics here. Matter of fact, there's a question that I wanted to get to here. How about this one from Jackson? Jackson says, has Michael Terry's position been nailed down? Also, will Sark transition to an OTA-style spring schedule with no spring game? Yeah, we still don't know what's happening with the spring game.
Yeah.
We have no idea. And when did we learn details about it? Do we remember the timeline from last year? Is it March? When do we learn that when the spring game is going to be? They usually announce it.
They normally have some sort of big, they build it up. The university does, because it follows what they have, like a Longhorn City Limits. They have the whole Devo Bowl
Jamboree or whatever
festival. Yeah, so it should be soon. And I say soon as in, you normally have about 2 months to plan all this out in advance.
Yeah,
right. So it should be relatively soon. Still, will there be an actual spring game? Will they go through padded practice? Will they have all the 15 practices allotted to them? That's the big question. That's kind of what we're monitoring at the moment. But for Michael Terry, it's been wide receiver from when he got on campus originally at the very beginning of the playoff run after he graduated and got on campus. And that's where he's beginning right now as well. We'll check back in as spring ball nears, but right now, wide receiver is kind of in that spot. So, you get a lot of, I know there's only really 2 main contributors that are returning from a year ago. Of course, Parker Livingstone's been a name. We've heard great things behind the scenes from all the freshmen. Who makes that jump in? Right now, it's a young groom, but it's pretty darn talented. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing our tight end position preview the other day, and we brought up Michael Terry's name at the end of it because we're not sure where he's going to play. We'll probably bring him up at the end of our wide receiver preview as well.
Yeah.
And maybe even the running back preview. I'm just going to say this. I don't want him playing one single position for the rest of his career. I would like to see him be a movable chess piece. Now, I don't want him moving around. Like Deebo Samuel, right? Deebo Samuel is known as the ultimate chess piece in the league. He never practices at running back. Y'all realize that? Like he practices at wide receiver. They practice him there. He doesn't go to like the position room. Like he's a natural runner. And so he knows the plays and they go through the plays with him, but they say they don't practice him there. Like, he's not just practicing at running back. So in terms of Michael Terry's fit and what position he's going to practice at, I'm not sure, but I would like to see Sark either make a boutique, special, unique position for him where you can move him around, or I'd like to see him actually, in terms of weaponizing him, I'd like to see him play more than one position. I'd like to see him at wide receiver and shift into the backfield at running back. I'd like to see him motioning him into a slot. I don't know how big he's going to get. If he gets big enough, maybe you can put him at tight end or H-back. I think he's dangerously I think he can be a dangerous weapon in terms of him being a multiple weapon. I know he can be a really good wide receiver too. It's probably where he wants to play because they score touchdowns and they make the most money in the league. But for Sark, I think Sark wants to be more of a multiple offense. I think some of the guys he's bringing in now, you've talked about it, so is Jerry. Bigger athletes, right? Nick Townsend, some of these just bigger overall athletes. Michael Terry's a big part of that too. I'd want to see these guys hunt matchups and move them around. So I can't wait to see what Sark does with them. I mean, he's a wide receiver. That means he's going to only be a wide receiver while he's on campus.
I totally agree. And going back to that conversation about Tory Becton, earning his keep, what he does with Michael Terry in these next 3 or 4, months essentially is going to dictate essentially where he begins his career, right? Is he a guy that jumps all the way up to about 240 pounds? Does he sit firm at 230? He came in right around 217, 219, but that's the base, right? That's the floor that he's going to be able to work with. That's going to dictate essentially where he starts his college career. So is the plan for Tory Becton and Sarkisian to kind of collaborate and say, all right, don't let him get too big now. Like, we like the speed, we like the frame. Just make sure that if he has to take on, if he has to take on an edge rusher or outside backer, can he do that? Get him to that size, and then we can work from there. But I'm really excited to see how he kind of molds him this year and the weight room and all that. So I'm excited for it.
Hey, Coach, what has been your experience with a guy like Michael Terry? Is it, in your opinion, the best thing to let him focus on a position, learn it, and master it? or when you get a freak that has multiplicity in their skill set like Michael Terry, would you use it or would you lose it essentially?
Yeah, and I think you need to experiment. I think it's good to start out, with the odds-on favorite position that the staff thinks he can fit in. But you definitely, it's going to take those guys that get work on both sides of the ball or two different positions.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to spend a lot of extra time, with the coaching staff or GAs or whoever it is, analyst, whoever it is that they have. With that position, so that they can kind of stay caught up on what they're doing. But it's definitely a spring thing because when you get in the fall, you're so focused on getting ready for games, you don't really have time to cross train guys that much. Mm-hmm. So the spring is a time to take a look at that, and then when you come into next fall, you settle in on a position and you work that craft because it's quality over quantity. You just need good work and then you can work them in another position. That's the quality I'm talking about, one-on-one time with a coach when everybody else is gone or early in the morning or whatever, to try to get him up to date on different positions. But a guy like Michael Terry you want to make sure you get it right. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to get it right. You can't, if nothing else for that kid, but also, they're going to put him what's best, where it's best for the team as well. And Michael Terry is just one of those guys that comes along and you just have to make sure you get it right, and I think where the kid's heart is, that's important too, because he's got to love, he's got to buy into the position that he's at, and he's got to buy in that room too, and so you got to be a little bit careful because there's guys in there busting their butts and maybe they're in the position Michael's in, and that's the only position they can play. And they see him, going back and forth. They're like, man, this ain't fair. I'm putting everything I got into this. And, that guy's here half the time and he's taking reps from me, Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things to think about, when you're looking at getting a guy's position nailed down.
That's a good point, Coach. And we know that Sark's offense, he asked a lot of his receivers, asked them to learn every position, every wide receiver position. That can be, a little bit tough for some younger wide receivers to master that. And then on top of that, the tight ends, if he is going to, get to the point where he can play tight end physically, Sark's tight ends move as much as any tight ends in the Power Five. I mean, he moves those guys around a lot and moving around, shifting a ton. That's also a lot to learn. So, yeah, that's a great point, Coach. I'm not sure the mental strain for a young player may be too much to be moving around a ton. So maybe that's something you add on their plate as they're, a sophomore or a junior. Maybe you add a little bit more once they get a chance to match something. I can't wait to see how Sark does it, but you're right, Coach. You can't get it wrong because a guy with so many options like that, it's almost, malpractice to get it wrong. It's like you can get it right in like 3 positions. How you screw it up? So I get you on that one. All right, I want to hit this Pro Football Focus ranking for the top 10 returning wide receivers. The top 10 returning wide receivers, I'll just say this, Ryan Wingo is not on the list. I was a little surprised. When I saw the headline, I was like, ooh, they're going to have a Ryan Wingo ranking here, and I didn't get it. He was not among the Pro Football Focus ranks of the top 10 returning wide receivers. But Texas will play a few of these guys. They got Jeremiah Smith at number 1 from Ohio State. Texas is going to play them, but that room is loaded with like 4 or 5 5-star receivers. Thank you very much, Matthew. Appreciate that. Remember last year they were supposed to play Jordan Tyson. He was hurt for Arizona State. He is at 3rd on this list. And then Ryan Williams from Alabama, he's number 2 on this list. But getting back to the guys that Texas is actually going to end up facing next season. Of course, Jeremiah Smith, best receiver, some people say in the country. They also, you go down this, they'll place Kevin Concepcion, the A&M transfer, and transfer to it. And he's going to be, he's number 8 on this list. Kevin Concepcion. And then they have at number 10, Eugene Wilson. Remember, he was hurt, I believe, when Texas played Florida last time. He was injured. So they got him at number 10 on the list. So the Longhorns will play 3 receivers that they claim are among the top 10 best receivers in the country. The reason I bring this up, first of all, I think Ryan Wingo should be on the list. I do think he's that good, but I understand productivity-wise and maybe based on their Pro Football Focus grades, he didn't make it. I do think he can be that good. I think that's number one thing I want to ask you guys about. The secondary will be challenged next year. I went and looked at their top 10 returning quarterbacks. By the way, they have Arch Manning at number 6 on their top 10 returning quarterbacks list. But there are also 3 quarterbacks based on their top 10 ranking that Texas will play next year. I think the honorable mention was actually Taylor Green from Arkansas. But then they also had DJ Lagway on there, and they had Diego Pavia as well, also one of the quarterbacks, the top 10 quarterback Texas will play next year. So my point being, Texas, when they start to play better quarterbacks with better wide receivers later in the season, in the postseason, that is when the Texas secondary was still one of the best in the country, one of the best all time. But that's when teams were able to actually make some plays against the Texas secondary. Texas just locked everybody down all season long, pretty much, made them look pedestrian, made them look inept a lot of the times. And then they played some better quarterbacks. And you talk about the coaches like, man, some better quarterbacks, Cade Klubnik going to make some plays against you. He's got better weapons. He's going to make some plays. And we saw with Sam Levitt, made some plays, even without his number 1 weapon. And, of course, we saw Will Howard make some plays. I believe the number I have is 33 explosive plays allowed by the Texas secondary in pass plays. So 33 explosive pass plays allowed. Those are 20-plus yard plays allowed all last season. Really good number. I mean, it's one of the best. That number, I think, is number 2 fewest allowed in the country, second fewest allowed in the country. But 10 of those came in the last 3 games. So you allowed 23 in 13 games. You allowed 10 in the last 3. That's because you played better quarterbacks with better wide receivers. Now, next season, you're not going to have Janae Barron, Makuba, some of your better weapons, Gavin Holmes, some of your better coverage to finish. You're not going to have those. Secondary is still going to be talented, but you're going to face better quarterbacks, and chances are you're going to have better receivers that you're going to face next year in the regular season compared to last season. What are you guys' thoughts about that? Because that, I'm not saying it worries me or anything. I think the pass rush is going to be good. I think the secondary is going to be adequate. But that is, I do think, something that will be more of a challenge than last season. He's going to face better quarterbacks on the schedule this year compared to last season.
Yeah, you see why Coach Gideon said, no, I'm taking my DC job while I can, right? He said, I'm selling high. I did a great job this year. We had a great secondary. I'm getting a raise, right? That's you can't blame him, right? That's part of coaching. So absolutely, congrats to Coach Gideon in that regard as well. But to your point, Rod, it's going to be a different level of quarterbacks, wide receivers, speed in the back end as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, hey, you don't have the Thorpe Award winner, right? You don't have Andrew Makuba coming out of the portal. Does Texas go out and add somebody at safety? I don't think so. I think that safety room is pretty healthy. It's maybe a little younger in terms of what this room looked like coming into this year. But the one piece that gives me a lot of reason for optimism in that secondary is Michael Taft. And I say that because you need communication in the back end. And what does Michael Taft do so well? Well, it's lead, it's communicate, it's talk, and get everybody on the same page. And so that's the reason why I look at it and say, okay, you can piece together Kobe Black or Santana Wilson or Cade Phillips with this secondary and move them in seamlessly, because that back end, you're going to have a Jelani McDonald with a lot of experience. You're going to have Derek Williams returning with a lot of experience. And then Michael Taft, who above all of these guys is going to be the oldest guy in the room with the best voice, the most leadership capability. It's going to be tougher this year, and they're going to allow more yards and more points. But, I don't think it's by any means going to be a weak spot, especially when you consider that marriage up front of a Colin Simmons and a Trey Moore and whoever else might be healthy in that pass rushing room. But it's gonna be interesting. I'm eager to hear in the spring what those battles are like against those young bucks who come in with 5 stars next to their name at wide receiver as well.
Yeah, Coach, we were asking Michael Taft. I spoke to him last week, actually. We were asking him about, playing amongst all these great players in the secondary, and he himself being a great player, right? I told him, you're one of the greats now at DBU. And just kind of asking, what do you believe your elite quality is, right? That brings to the table. To CJ's point, he said, I thought that my job going into this season to help the turnaround, to help Texas resurrect the secondary. He said, if I could get all these really great players lined up and I can take the burden of alignment assignment off of their plate, like I can make sure, hey man, you got this responsibility, and I can make sure you're lined up, make sure everybody is on the same page, and make sure everybody is hive-minded. He said, if I basically do that, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if I can get everybody lined up, he said, then everybody can play fast. He said, my job is easy. He said, my job then is really, really easy. He said, my toughest part of his job was pre-snap getting everybody lined up in the right place. And he said, when I could do that, he said we were an elite secondary because those guys are better. He kind of just said they're better players than him. I kind of would dispute that. There are better players than him, but he was just being humble. And he said, I know my job is to get the really elite athletes in the right place. And then I let them play fast. To CJ's point, they're going to need that guy more than ever this season. Yeah. The guy that can get everybody lined up in the right place. And he's not going to say it, but that's why I didn't have a lot of coverage busts and a lot of mental errors, coaches, because guys were in the right place. Even when guys got beat, it wasn't a coverage bust usually. It was just, hey, guy made a great play on the other side of the ball.
Usually, they call the funny thing is that, they call a guy, he's a coach on the field. Usually that's a guy who you're not expecting a lot from physically, but you're expecting, but he brings it physically. I mean, he's one of those rare guys that impacts games himself. Instead of just blending in with the crowd, he stands out because he's so well prepared for every game, and he's such a competitor, and he loves the university so much. He doesn't want to let anybody down, and he's just a standard, I think, back there that we're going to reap the benefits of for a long time because he is a coach on the field, obviously, but he's also one of the best players on the field. And that's a rare combination, to have. But I think that I don't know that there's any way we can duplicate the season that our secondary had this year. Facing the competition, I don't think we're going to be probably as fortunate. It's unfortunate for our opponent, but it was fortunate for us that we played some teams and the top receiver was out when we played them. That's probably not going to happen again. But I do think if it can't be at the level it was, that the slack will be picked up by a more efficient offense.
Yeah.
Because we are going to have a dual threat quarterback. We're going to have a guy that we're not sure what he's capable of yet, but we've seen glimpses, and it's very, very exciting. And so I think maybe that, the offense can take up some of the slack, but I'm just so thankful that we've got the secondary in place that we have. But I think it's going to be really hard to duplicate what they did this year. I'm hoping the offense can take up the slack.
I love what Coach said about the offense. First of all, the offense takes care of the ball better and taking up the slack, as you said. But also the pass rush. Well, the pass rush was great last year, so I'm not even saying pass rush it was fantastic. What if it's better? That would be. Yeah, exactly. See, that would also help a secondary that may not be as elite as one was this year. Trust me, I had Sean Rogers and Casey Hampton on my D-line, and that was one of the easiest. That was my first year starting coach, and I was like, college football is kind of easy, man. This is pretty easy. I was covering for like 2.5 seconds every time, so it was easy. Then after the big Sean and Casey left, I was like, oh, man, it's a little tougher out here playing DB. So, yeah.
Oh, these guys got faster.
Yeah,
that's great.
It felt like that.
Great. Yeah,
it felt like that. All right. Thank you guys for all the questions and the super chats. Really appreciate you, and really appreciate my man Stevie Lee coming on with us as well. Courtesy of our good friends at Hard Grove Roofing, hardgroveroofing.com. Thank you to our friends over at South Point, southpointdodge.com. Thank you to Flat Creek Estate, flatcreekestate.com as well. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's a real MVP. Couldn't have done it without Matthew. Don't want to do it without Matthew, as a matter of fact. Thank you, Coach, for all the wisdom and the levity. Thank you, CJ, for all the nuggets and the knowledge. Really appreciate you. And thank you all out there for watching and for listening. If we missed any question or comment, we apologize for that. Please direct them to the guys tomorrow. They'll have Coffee and Football starting at 8 a.m. And we'll have our Tuesday night live stream with myself, CJ Vogel, Aaron Hogan will be hanging out for that one as well. Also for Coach and for CJ and for Matthew. Until next time, hook 'em horns.